fantastic place to network. Of course, there is a lot of resources available for people who are interested in startups. So if you are in here, and you're not, I'm sure we are all members, or if you don't have any members in here, if you have somebody who is not a member, please join, and please share Naija Startup with your community. Naija Startup is my plug for all progress-oriented information. And of course, there's also a social community we have for engagement. It's called Banter. That is my staple. That's my own plug for social media consumption, because I get all the news across the world from it. It's been a great pleasure to be a member of Naija Startup, and I'm happy to promote it. I endorse it. I'm a proud member. And I'm happy this evening to be sharing this opportunity with Aramide. Aramide is the progenitor of Naija Startup, the brains behind it all. She's somebody I've had the privilege of meeting a couple of years ago, and she's doing great work. If you know Aramide, I'm sure she has made an impact on your life already. And of course, our main speaker today, Mr. Adetu. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to benefit from your wealth of experience and exposure across Africa. You've been at Coca-Cola, you've been in John Holt, you've been in Diageo, you've been on the board of FP Holdings. Your CV is intimidating. It is impressive how you've been able to pack all of this into one single career. I am keen to know. From chemical engineering to marketing, how you've been able to get it done. I'm keen to know. Africa, they say, is a dark continent. We need some light from you. I'll let Aramide continue from here.
Thank you, Shola. And again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today, monthly roundtable. It's a pleasure to have everybody here, and it's a real delight for us to have Mr. Seni Adetu here. I'm sure you can all see his stunning profile, and even with everything he's done, he still continues to push the boundaries and do amazing work. So we're so grateful for you to have to be able to give us your time today. This series is a monthly series that we do where members of the Naija Startups come together to learn from business leaders, African business leaders. We started it this year, and it's been a real pleasure and delight just learning, being able to just ask real questions, because again, we are budding business leaders in business and professional life. So we look forward to going into this. It's really just a conversation with a few questions where we'll be learning from you. And of course, there will be some opportunity for members of the community, some of whom are still joining, to ask one or two questions near the end. So if you permit me, we will go straight in. Thank you again, Mr. Adetu. It's a pleasure to have you. And so I'm going to be starting today by asking questions around leadership. It's something I ask everybody who comes on this hot seat, and I like asking it because our leaders have different answers, different experiences, so they can speak to it differently. And we know where at least Nigeria, Africa is going right now, all the different things going on, what we see in the industry and in politics and all. So I think it's a very fitting question to start with. And the first is, what qualities are lacking among today's leaders, in your view?
First, let me thank you for the honor to be here. You are thanking me for this, but from my perspective, I see it as a privilege, not least because actually my purpose, and everyone should have a purpose, okay? So my purpose in life, which I formed about 25 years ago, is actually to inspire a new generation of African leaders. So to the extent that you invite me to come and do this, actually what you are doing is you are helping me to fulfill my purpose. So first, take it from me that I'm returning the thanks that you've given to me. Okay, so that's that. So I'm doing it with all pleasure. I could never have passed the opportunity to, and that's why, like Aramide said, I have a mentorship program that runs with probably a group like this as well. So I'm delighted to be here. I could never say that enough. The other thing I need to say upfront is that to the extent that you bring different leaders here, you might get different answers, but hopefully all of those will be driving towards the same outcome, which is how to make you better leaders. So I always say to people that leadership is like learning. Up until the day you give up the ghost, you keep learning. So Have I reached the pinnacle of leadership? No. Am I still growing? A capital yes. But you obviously would expect that as you grow on the journey, if you've started early and you're getting the right, should I say, guidance and focus on it, then you should be ahead of people that are just coming, then the opportunity to be able to inspire them. But to answer your question, first question as to what I see that is lacking in terms of leadership amongst the, should I say, the younger generation, I mean, I think there are like 2-3 things I see. I think the first is a lack of perseverance, real perseverance, that ability to stay the course, okay, having that staying power. I thought that we had a little more. I see a lot of, and by the way, thankfully, I can talk to you about startups because after 30 years leading multinational companies, the last 5 years, 6 years, I've been managing my own business as an entrepreneur, which thankfully, to the glory of God, has been very successful. Just by way of digressing, I have an advertising agency and a media agency, and we started 5-6 years ago. I think we're in the top 3, top 4 in Nigeria. And I mean, and that's despite that there are agencies that have been around for 30-40 years. I attended one that did their 40th anniversary 2 years ago. So we're 5-6 years and we're in the top 3, top 4. I'm just saying that I'm just like you. If you're an entrepreneur, after all those 30 years of managing people's businesses, I've been doing what you're doing now. So hopefully that means I can share my experience in that. I think there's a lack of perseverance. I think that people are quick to make judgments about businesses, with the result that, you know, I think some startups are failing because they're not given the opportunities to succeed. They're not even given the chance to succeed. I'm never going to suggest that you should not quit something that's not working well. I'm not going to suggest that you die with a dying business, but I want you to know what the tipping point is, where you realize that going back is actually worse than staying the course and finishing that. I don't see enough of that amongst this new generation, and I could speak all day about that. I think the other thing that I realized, I said 3 things. The second one is that I think the leadership attribute of, and I say this all the time, less is more. I don't see that in the generation now. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to tell some stories and try to put some of this in context. I see that people are all over the place. Okay, so your generation has started this thing you call side income, passive income, that income. I don't have a problem with that, but only to the extent that when I stop you, you can define for me what your core business is. If you don't have a core business and all you have is a multitude of small businesses, then you're losing me. I'm not on your side. So what's your core? And by the way, if people understand the whole concept of side income, but the way I understand it, it could even be that you don't need to be in the business to make money from the business. That's my own understanding of side income. What I hear from this generation is that, oh, I have a cake making business. I have a cake making business. I have a tailoring business. That's what you call side income. You lose me. Okay. As CEO of Guinness in Nigeria here, I'm going to give live examples if that's okay, just so that you can better understand what I mean. I saw a lady who said one day she was going to close her bar. She was a very big retail customer for Guinness. So I asked her why. She said she wasn't making money. I said, no, that couldn't be true. Every time we pass here, we're checking on your store. There's so much traction. There's really footfall. There are people in the shop. So what's going on? She said she couldn't understand. Apparently what was happening was that because she was running after so many side incomes, so she was a teacher, she had a sewing outfit somewhere, she was selling Guinness, she was. What then happened was that the people she put in the Guinness bar, okay, were actually buying their stock and will finish their stock before selling their stock. So for us visiting as people from Guinness, we saw a lot of footfall. Like I said, people were there, but actually they were consuming the products of the same people that were, the same lady that was paying them to say, all in the name of, so I'm saying that less is more. I see a lot of, and this person was a young person, so try to see why you need to put your horsepower, okay, and focus on that. And the third thing that I think is lacking, and I'm going to let you move on, is what I call the spirit of interdependencies, okay? So I don't know whether it's because of the competitive nature of the younger generation, okay? It's almost like everybody wants to do their thing. People don't want to call people into things that they're saying that are good. Whereas in our case, maybe we were less competitive. We sort of opened up the space. We created interdependencies. But the beauty of that was that we learned faster in terms of what will work, what will not work, than just sitting and trying to manage our own. Partnership was quite something, was something that we picked up very quickly. Okay, we learned to really work together. I've seen some people doing that well in this generation, I must say, but I would like to see people do it more. Look, when it comes to scale, and maybe you're going to talk about scale, the reality is that if you decide that you're going to be on your own and manage with the little resources you have, then you're going to expect that your reward will be as little as your resources that you're putting in. It's the reason that if you go to Dubai, if you are into clothing, you go to Dubai to get a container to bring into Nigeria, into Zimbabwe, or into wherever you are from. Okay, the hotel that you are staying in Dubai is not going to know that you've only come to bring one container. The airline is not going to know that you've got to bring only one container. They're going to pay the same rate as the one who's going to bring 10 containers. So the scale that you get from partnership or interdependencies is what I would advise the younger generation to think about and try to imbibe. So those are the three things I see. There's a lot that this generation is doing well, even better than my generation. But your question was specific. What do I see that you're lacking? So I thought to address that.
Thank you so much. So insightful, perseverance, focus, you mentioned, and also the ability to scale, and by collaborating. Thanks for those very, very practical pieces of feedback. My next question, I'm going to come back to leadership. I don't want to just ask all leadership at once, but you mentioned scale. So I want to touch on scale around business growth. Because that is what a lot of us are focusing on as entrepreneurs: scaling our businesses, growing, pivoting, expanding. So what are some of the practical steps a business should consider when it wants to scale its products and services, especially to new regions and countries in this new normal?
So the first thing I say every time I'm asked this sort of question, this similar question, is that go back to that saying that you've got to look before you leap. Okay, so you can't afford to follow the Joneses. Okay, somebody's gone into a market, is successful, does not mean that I can ride on that. I think that you be careful that the horse you want to ride on, you need to know about that horse and what's making them successful. So the first thing I would say is that you've got to have a working document. Some call it business plan, but for the purpose of an entrepreneur, a working document that speaks to an understanding of the macroeconomics of the area or of the new place you are expanding into. You're thinking about what growth prospects exist within the sort of sector, the industry you're going to, what the consumer threats are, things around expectations about the battlegrounds, what are the key battlegrounds, what is your winning strategy, and all of that. So first, you need to almost do what some other people call your due diligence, call it whatever you do it, but you've got to create something for you that is the convincing document that it's actually a prize that is worth going after. So that's the first thing. But beyond that is that you need to have a very deep consumer understanding. Okay, and consumer could be customer if it's a service. Bottom line is the end user, the off-taker, whatever you call it. And the reason I'm saying that is that oftentimes we tend to export our understanding of the customers from where we're taking off to the so-called new geography you're talking about. You can't do that. You can't export your understanding. You've got to create a situation for yourself where you assume that you don't know what even the little that you assume you don't know. It's extremely important. Understand the consumer. I'll give an example. Managing businesses across Africa for Coca-Cola. I was leading for West Africa. We had places where we launched, beg your pardon, launched a 1.5 liter Coke pack. Okay, massive success. Same West Africa, actually. We went to one or two other places. We launched the same pack, massive failure. So we begin to ask why. What we had not taken into consideration was the consumer insight around behavior. It happened that in one of the markets, market A, sharing was such a beauty. People love to share, which was what the pack was a sharing pack. Okay, so the moment we launched there, we just thought, it should be successful across Africa. But we hadn't known that in the other place, everybody was always second guessing the other one. I'm not going to share with somebody, let somebody go and put something in my drink type of thing. Everybody wanted what they call a solo pack, 25 CL. It's me and my drink. So even in the bar, in that market, I don't want to mention the country, genuinely, people want to go to the toilet, they go with a drink. And then we were saying that people should share 1.5 liter. Of course, nobody bought it. And that's why I'm saying that you can't, as you expand into new geographies, because my role here is to give you practical examples as much as I can, you can't assume that the insights you have from one, your understanding of the consumer in one market will work for the other one. Thirdly, you've got to absolutely understand local nuances, different from insights I talked about. Local nuances in terms of the regulatory authorities, what if there are issues around intra or inter-border trading and all of that, you must really understand that. What works, what doesn't work. You have to understand that. Contracting. How do contracts work? Oftentimes you just simply forget that at the end of the day, if you don't have things documented and well signed, and if it's not a place where they honor contracts, or as well as they should do, then you are taking a big risk. Of course, you can still decide that despite the risk, you want to go in, but it's something you should be conscious about. And then my favorite of all of that is that where you can travel with a local beside you, it's better to do that. So when I look at, the last October, was it, Nigerian Bottling Company invited us, myself inclusive, to their 60th anniversary. Now, if you've been in this country for 60 years, there's something that is working for you. You've been through, all the trials and the peaks, and you've done all of that. And one of the things that we talked about during some of the table discussions is that one of the reasons they're successful, and by the way, even if this is being recorded, I think MTL learned the hard way, is that you can't go into some markets without taking into consideration the need to involve the locals. So Nigeria Bottling Company was not only listed on the stock exchange in Nigeria, they had a board that involved the Greeks that are the owners of the business, as well as Nigerians. They had people in places that are locals, with the result that at the end of the day, they are shielded by those locals. So if something was to go wrong, is the locals that first be fighting for the company. Okay, I'll be talking about job losses and all of that. A lot of times people do that. Even as entrepreneurs, by the way, as small businesses, you can do that. You can go into a place and find a local partner, secure partnership that makes sense. And then, like I said, I call it shield. Use that to sort of drive the penetration that you want in the market. So for me, it's really around, just get yourself prepared by your due diligence, understand the consumers, understand the size of the price that you're going for, have a winning strategy, involve the locals, understand the regulation. And like I said, just don't assume you know everything going into a market. You just take away your drift and your files, and then go in there and try to learn and grow from there. That's what I think.
I'm really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying all these tips. Like, we're just at the beginning and I'm enjoying them so much. And I'm going to touch on something else that's not even on my list, but you mentioned regulation. And regulation is something that it seems like a headache for startups. It seems like something that is kind of like that elephant in the room or thorn in the flesh. People almost don't want to even address it until they realize, hey, oh, by the way, or they get sanctions, as we've seen. So what kind of tips will you give startups who are looking to enter business in relation to regulatory environments? How can they better engage? Maybe I don't know whether it's the immaturity that doesn't allow us to understand that we need to engage with regulators, but what is the missing link? Why is it that it's so hard, and what can be done to sort of like allow for it to be a better ecosystem, if I want to call it that?
No, it's a brilliant question, because the matter of regulatory restrictions and constraints has always been one that's actually stifled a lot of businesses. In fact, at some point, I used to use the word overregulation. Depending on where you are, you talk about overregulation when you see multiple taxation, when you see draconian regulatory laws. There are some industry, including the one I'm in, for instance, where foreigners are not allowed to own more than local businesses, and so on and so forth. My number one rule to people when you're going into there, and I'm going from experience, and I'm speaking openly now, that what we decided to do when I started this company was we were going to go out of our way to ensure the sort of governance that we established in our business was above board. So we're going to set for ourselves the sort of governance standards that were actually probably stricter and higher than those of the
I think we've lost Mr. Adetu, or is it just me?
Oh, okay. I thought it was me actually. Okay, I'm sure he'll be back in like a minute or so. Thank you, everyone. Oh yeah, we have great more people now. He'll be back. I actually thought it was me.
What do you think of his statement around interdependencies and partnership? People trying to do solo doloing.
It's a fact. It's actually a fact. And there should be more collaboration. We've built that whole silo mindset, like my own man, my own thing.
My own startup is me and myself.
I think if people just had a different perspective, they could see the opportunity. But anyway, I don't want to steal the direction of the discussion, but I do think he makes a solid point there that we can really come together to build phenomenal things because there are economies of skill. You know, so many reasons. So it's the mindset that needs to change. Maybe we got it
If we
from
can,
our
if we
parents.
can think bigger, we can do more.
Yes, absolutely. So I don't know where. I guess it's the mindset of my own, which is also why people are not as patriotic as well to the country. It's just that whole like very
I think
solo.
patriotism is a different conversation. But it says
But
something.
you can link it.
I know you love Nigeria,
You
and
can
so
link
do I.
it.
But
You can
he
actually
said,
link it, because
so something
it's
else he
just
said.
so like my own.
He said less is more. Side income, this gig economy. Everybody has 2 or 3 incomes on this side. But what he said that really stuck to me was
Yeah.
focus on your core business. I'm sure quite a number of people will struggle to define what their core business is.
I went through that as well, and I can see why it's so important to have the core, like the main. What are you about? Like, what are you known for? And that's what he said, that you just lose him if you're doing this. So what is your, and I think that's what people need to do, like introspection and just focus on one thing. So I don't know where this whole. It's nice to have multiple streams of income, which is great. It can be. It doesn't have to be multiple businesses. By the way, people confuse it. They think, okay, it means multiple. You have to have multiple startups. No, you can have passive income. You can have different income, but I think focus is key, like he said. So
I'm struggling sometimes with my teams, and I can see pretty smart young people who I know are overstretched. They are doing other things. I'm not sure exactly what it is they're doing, but I feel I'm not getting 100% of them at work. And
you
it's
can
really,
always
really
tell.
challenging coping
Yeah.
with that.
You can
So-
always tell when there's some distraction. Like you just know that they're up to all sorts and it's stretching them. They're not productive. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. We can ask Mr. Adetu when he comes.
Another question I'd love to ask him is this brain drain situation. We are
Yes.
losing people by the bucket loads. Canada is taking our people. I don't want to use the word stealing, but sometimes when it's good stuff you have invested in, you have trained, you have mentored, you've supported emotionally, at the point where they begin to find their feet and begin to add value back to the organization you're trying to build, they tell you, I'm going to Canada. Next thing, Australia is coming for our team, for our people. How do we cope with this? How do we handle this? Or am I the only one going through this challenge at this time?
In fact, I met
Canada
a startup. I met one of Schneider startups member today. He used to lead an air. I won't say the name of the airline. And he started an airline business as well, and he's now pivoting into something else in relation to that. And he was saying to me that he's looking to hire missionaries and not mercenaries, people who just believe in the vision, because he feels like all the overskilled people that he's trying to interview. Yeah, all the overskilled people that he's trying to interview, they could easily just jackpot in a minute, right? So for him, he's just trying to find another approach about hiring. But I don't think anybody has cracked that code yet. But that was interesting. We have Mr. Adetu back.
I cannot apologize enough for that. It's easy for me to say that this never happens to me, but it has happened here. So
We all go through it.
I was always thinking I was
You've been baptized by
exactly.
fire.
I was always thinking I was insulated against this type of thing. I've changed the network, so I apologize. I think we're talking
No
about
worries, sir.
regulation, and I was talking about. Just hold on, let me just shut the door. And I was talking about the fact that what we decided to do, obviously, was to set some very high standards for ourselves. Now, what we therefore have done is that where we realize that we cannot confront directly issues relating to regulation that have significant impact on how we want to operate, okay, we just actually contract things out. We let people who are experts in those areas deal with them. So, for example, when it comes to the matter of tax, you get an expert to talk to the guys at LIRS or FIRS or wherever the tax authority is in your country, wherever you're calling from. If it comes to the issue of licensing, get a consultant that knows how to talk to them in a professional, legitimate way, and just absorb yourself from the risks of having to deal with do things in an underhand way, which ultimately may catch up with you. It's tough. It's not easy, but the matter of regulation, and then importantly, where you can, try to be in the forefront of creating the change that you want. So where they have associations within the industry that you operate, try to play a leading role there. Try to be a change agent there. You can't play on the side. So, for instance, in my industry, you have MIPAN, which is for media. You have the APCON and all of that. When they start forming their council and all of that, raise your head up and be part of that, because that's the way you're going to cause the change that you want in the industry. So first thing is, don't go dirty. Where you can, use a third-party consultant to deal with them, okay, in a way, and the consultant is very clear that you want to do things above board. And then, as I said, try to lead, try to cause the change that you want in the industry. Those are the ways that I try to manage the regulator. It's tough, I repeat, but it's also what you have to do business in many of these, especially in Africa.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm going to switch slightly to the topic of people. Before you came back, on one of the things we were talking about is the brain drain that we've been struggling with as a country, and as startups, we are finding difficult to find new talents. Big established businesses are also losing talent. Bolade already dropped a question on this on the question and answer board. How do you hold on to talents? What do you do about brain drain?
Okay, so why do people join in the first place? So what I want to, before I talk about how I hold on to talents, the first is that if I'm going to join a company as Seni Adetu, there are three things I look out for. Okay, it just then turns out that you can put an acronym of 3 P's, but that wasn't how I started when I was thinking about these things. The first is that, let's face it, you want a good pay. Okay, is you want to get paid. Okay, that's why you would move from one job to another. Okay. The second thing is that you want a good position. Okay, not only do I want to get paid, I don't want to leave my job as marketing manager to be marketing manager somewhere else. I want to be marketing manager here and move to marketing director somewhere else. So I look for what position is being advertised. Does it make sense for me? Does it fit into my career path? And of course, the third one, which is also very important that I used to watch out for, is the profile of the company. So does this company guarantee me, job security? Would they come back tomorrow and say they can only pay half salary? So I want to satisfy those 3 things. I want to make sure that the profile of the company is one I'm proud of. I don't want to work for a nail manufacturing company. I'm not saying people that do that are wrong, but I'm not going to go home and give a nail to my child to say, can you test this, whether it is soft enough, put it in your mouth. But I could go to work at a Coca-Cola and say, look, we're trying to launch a new product. How does this taste? So the profile, the package, the position. Now, when people come in, obviously expectations are high. There's one thing I always say that you have to absolutely do. Try to come up with a strategy to make the new hire, the employee, a citizen of the company, a citizen of the company. Now, that's a big word for me, because look at us, we don't change our citizenship. Anyhow, we're not aware. We're changing now, like you said, brain drain. But I mean, ideally, when you are born as a Nigerian or as a Zimbabwean, as a Ghanaian, as an American. Now, if you can make an employee a citizen, that means that you're looking to have the employee for the long haul in the organization, okay? And what you do to make that happen, apart from the pay and all of that, is that you have to absolutely know how to engage the employee. The engagement about the employee, we always say, is about know him, focus him, value him, or her. When I say him, her, okay? You know, you focus, you value. So knowing, for example, is just being in the world of that person when the person works for you. Okay. I was embarrassed one time. That was when I started I started growing my leadership. I asked for somebody on the shop floor in Ghana, and everybody laughed. And I said, why? As they said, oh, she's gone on maternity leave. And I said, why? I said, was she pregnant? And everybody around me burst into laughter. Now, this was a person I was passing every day. I didn't even know she was pregnant. So I just asked, where is she? She's one professor. Was she pregnant? And they all laughed. I didn't know the lady. That means I was not even as a leader. I was not in her life. Employees want people that know them, that focus them, that value them. So there's what you call that I try to do, even in my own small company. Now, I don't want to call it small, is to create this thing they call the value survey. Is by far, in my opinion, by far the best way to engage an employee and get them to stay. The value survey is that every year or every 2 years, depending on what you can afford, you measure how connected the employee is to the company. And if you're doing that well and you're raising the right questions, then the employee is telling you things that ordinarily you would not have paid attention to. Okay? In another market, I said I'm going to tell stories. Another market, okay, I overlooked the fact that we had mostly ladies in a particular function. And when we asked them, when we decided according to us, to make life more comfortable for them, to make them happier, we created a gym that we spent a lot of money to put together. Then what happened was that these employees were not using the gym. So I called my HR director one day. I said, why are they not using the gym? And he said he didn't know. So I called the ladies. I did a skip level. The HR wasn't there, and therefore I was meeting with them. And I said, and there were if there were 20 people in the room, there were probably about 16 or 15 ladies. It was a marketing team. So for some reason, more ladies. And I said, look, why are people not using the gym? And they said to me, look, by the time I'm done with my work at 6, it's time to go home and meet my little girl. So what time do I have to use the gym? Oh, and by the way, we've been talking about you paying for antenatal for so long. Look at it, compare the cost of your gym to the cost of antenatal for the 20-30% that will get pregnant in a year, something like that. And I felt very, very embarrassed. Why? Because we hadn't called that through the value survey. It was subsequent to that we started doing value survey, and people could, in an anonymous way, actually express what will make them more connected to the company. And so, long story short, the short answer to your question is that for me, the best way to keep an employee, aside from the fact that you be competitive with your salary scale and all of that, is to have the person engaged to the company. Let the person feel valued. And by the way, when you come up with the results of the value survey, best practice is to have a well-defined plan on how you're going to address those things that show up from the value survey. So if people are coming about working till late, if people are talking about being verbally abused by their bosses, if people are talking about whatever, you have to have a very conscious, very intentional plan on how you're going to deal with that, such that you could even, like I did in one of the markets that I managed, you assign a certain percentage of the bonus for leaders, especially line managers. You assign a certain percentage of their bonus for the year to the score of the value survey. Because actually, line managers were scored based on what came out. So you hear some that will be 40%, 60%, and all of that. Before you need, to the extent that people wanted to, assure of the bonus at the end of the year, then they paid attention to ensuring that the people were valued. And so that way we lifted people up. And there's a perfect correlation, a very clear correlation between how valued I feel to the company and how long I want to stay in the company. So if I'm valued and I feel I'm engaged and I'm connecting to the company, boy, you have to pay a premium. You have to pay a bomb to get me out of that company to another company. So that's the way I have managed employee engagement in service of bringing them up as citizens of the company.
I'm still taking notes, right? You are spewing out nuggets of gold every statement you make, and I just love the way you do. Your points go in threes. So this one is peer progression and profile, which makes it just amazingly easy to memorize and process. And a question on value surveys. Many of us have been members of different organizations, and we do surveys annually. Why is it that what you've been able to do with your surveys doesn't translate in many organizations? You do surveys, and if we must do surveys, there's a deadline. The company HR is harassing everybody. We do the surveys, and that's it. We wait for next year's survey.
I mean, I answer that. If you do survey for the sake of just ticking the box, you're not going to get any result out of it. What I'm saying is that when people know that the stakes are high, when it's tied to their bonus. By the way, people love money. They don't wake up at 5 a.m. to come to work just because they love the owner of the business, okay? It doesn't matter whether the person is called Diageo, is called Coca-Cola, is called anything. When you, like I said, when you assign a certain percentage of leaders package or bonus, so we talk about people getting dinked. That was the language we were using in Diageo in those days. You get dinked in terms of rating. What that meant is that if ordinarily based on the numbers you delivered, you are an exceed expectation. So you have below expectation, meet some, meet expectation, exceed expectations, and all of that. If ordinarily you are an exceed expectations in terms of your numbers, but they then look at your value survey, which is done annually, and your value survey, you've come below a certain threshold. Let's say your employees that work with you have scored you at 50% in terms of your leadership. Then they ding you. Dinging means that they drop you from exceed expectation to meet expectation. Okay. Now that drop is directly translatable to salaries, to money. So there's no two ways about it why you would take value survey to be important. You really want to, you have a skin in the game. The stakes are high, like I said. You want to make money. So you don't listen. What I realized in all my career is that what you don't assign some value to, okay, you don't get anything out of it. If people don't see that they have a stake in it, because people always, anything you do, as Africans and non-Africans, always asking, what's in it for me? And what's in it for me can be positive or negative. If what's in it for me is that if I do this, I get better bonus, I'm going to go for it. If what's in it for me is that if I don't do this, I get the consequence of it, which is a drop in whatever it is, then I have to attend to it. So always think about when you manage employees, let them get to a point where there's an answer to what's in it for me. If they can answer that, you'll get results from it. I learned that long time ago, managing businesses. If they see that there's something in it from them, positive or negative, the chances are high.
I want to ask a question that goes way back into your background. You are a chemical engineer, University of Lagos. Today, you are managing and leading businesses. So the first thing I saw about your profile was that, okay, you're a chemical engineer, you are working in Adetu, it's all about manufacture, production, quality assurance, and all that. If can you look back and say, this is the point where I moved, you've made a switch from the mechanics of business to the people infrastructure? Because when you talk about leadership, you talk about people, you talk about rewards, you talk about survey, feeling the pulse of the people, tying it to rewards and all that. You seem to be talking about weaving the people infrastructure into a shape that is required to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so great question. I get asked all the time. The good news is that I made a strong 2-1 in chemical engineering from Unilag. The bad news is that I never practiced chemical engineering for even a day. So I got sent to a company called Chemical and Allied Products Limited in Aba to do my national youth service. And then they called me in and said, oh, great, we have a chemical engineer. Now, from tomorrow, you start going with the marketers to the trade so that when they are doing the marketing, if a technical question comes out from the products we're selling what they call HTH, high something hypochlorite, which is actually some chemical that is used to clean swimming pools and stuff like that. You see, it's even difficult for me to remember now. That's how far I've gone away from engineering, from chemical engineering anyway. So So I was to follow them and sort of sit at the back. They'll do the marketing. I'll sort of listen. And then if a technical question came out as to how the product will help to clean the swimming pool better, then I was to do that. When we got back, the leader of the team told our boss, one Dr. Nwachukwu, I will never forget, this was as far back as 1985, told them and said, this guy is supposed to be an engineer, but he's actually a better marketer than a chemical engineer. What happened was that I ended up doing a lot of the talking and the selling in that meeting, my first meeting, with the result that from that moment, they moved me from, as a youth corper, from what was supposed to be a technical department to a marketing department. So I think I did chemical engineering for half a day in that meeting. And from that 1985 to now, never done anything engineering. That's why I said sadly, after all the efforts to make a good degree. And by the way, I was even offered assistant lecturership at Unilag at that time. I would have done my service there, but I just wanted to go into that corporate environment. And then I found that I never practiced chemical engineering for a day. So that's what happened. So from there, I moved to John Holt as a marketer, Coke as a marketer, and then as an MD, Guinness as MD. I'm here as an entrepreneur. I don't even know anything about. I can't even define chemical engineering anymore. Sadly.
Thank you so much. That's amazing, sir. I want to build on Shala's people infrastructure points, because we've talked a lot about people, vision, buying into the vision, making people citizen of your organization, leadership, and it's really all about that when it's said and done. Like you said, oh, have we lost him? No, okay, we haven't lost him. Sorry. You said it's more about the people. You have to sort of incentivize. So there's things around strategy, structure, incentives. It's really about the people thing. The technical things, like you mentioned, you can learn that, you can work on that. But this soft side, I feel like there's a massive gap, and we're seeing a lot of issues come to play now in the ecosystem where we can see clear, dire gaps in leadership skills of founders. So these gaps are now translating into issues that are being now presented to the general public. So my question is particularly around culture. How do you build and shape the right culture for your organization? I guess there's no right? So it's just about culture, like optimal or culture that enhances. There are organizations that you can see that have great work culture. There's always these top 10, 100 tables of where best places to work. How can founders begin to learn to do that? What do they need to do? What is it that is missing? Because there is something really missing. Even some of the successful startups with the best balance sheets or raise the most money, clear issues around culture. So what needs to be done, or what do we need to do?
So certainly a lot of people, and especially should I say SMEs, tend to underplay the significance of people of talent in the organization. I think we're always so busy chasing numbers, such that we forget that at the end of the day, it's people that deliver numbers. Okay, so I mean, I worked for John Holt, which at that time was partly a Unilever partner. I worked with Coca-Cola, I worked with Diageo, and all those three. To make my point. I'm not going to mention which. There was one of those three that said, our biggest asset is our people. There's another one of those three that says our biggest asset is our brands. There's a third one of those three that says our biggest asset is our reputation. Okay, nothing wrong with any of them. So there's the reputation. You can't tell with our reputation is what that company says. By the way, real life story, those three companies, I worked with them. Another one was about brands. Then another one, people. And I get asked every time. So for those three, I was doing this at Lagos Business School, CEOs, and they asked me, so those three, Seni, what would you say it's your best, it's the most important asset? And I said to them that it's like you're sitting on a tripod, okay? And think about the tripod. The tripod has in quote 3 legs. Each of those legs in quote represents those 3 things we're talking about. Take out any one of the legs, the tripod falls, okay? So if you are fantastic at people, by the way, if you are fantastic at brands, which is performance, really brands is about performance, but if your reputation stinks, okay, it's a matter of time before you go down. So if you are so good at people, I mean, even for your cleaners, you buy G-Wagon. That's how good you are with people. You buy G-Wagon for all your cleaners. But if your reputation stinks, you go down. Do it any way you want. Mix and match it anyway, and take just one out. Okay. But then so all three are important is the point I'm raising by that, because it doesn't matter if you're good with people, if you don't focus on performance, stock exchange will throw you at it. But when the rubber hits the road, if you're asking me that which is the most important, without a doubt in my mind, it is people. Because it's people at the end of the day that will manage the brands to deliver performance, the numbers, and it's people that will manage the reputation. Okay? So this thing about people is so important. How does that tie into culture? To answer your question, understand that culture is really an aggregate of the behavior of the people in the organization. Okay, that's what, simply put, that's what the culture is. When you say the culture here is a culture of performance, it's because everybody in that organization has an ownership attitude. We own performance, and you see it, you feel it, and all of that. Now, therefore, the best way to create a culture is, in my opinion, to first of all have a set of values that define who you are as an organization. Because it is your values that you want people to live. And when they are living those values, then comes out of that the culture of the organization. So for my company, for instance, I have about 5 values. I talk about leaders creating the conditions for their people to succeed. I talk about ownership, okay? Everybody owning the whole, not just my task, but the outcome. I talk about creating possibilities for the organization. Talk about 4 or 5 values. Once you have those values, okay, every time somebody goes out of those values in terms of their behavior, if you apply some consequence management to that, to bring people back to that, when an outsider comes, you'll find it easy. And people come to my organization, I have to say that, and any of you will be welcome if you want to come and have a meeting there. I've seen people coming to say, you know what I like about your company? Everybody owns every other person. Because you see people, because of the ownership value that we've created, owning the whole, you see people asking, Aramide, are you done? Can I help you? Shola, what can I do for you? So what that means is that I'm done with my part, but I realize that it's just like a relay race when you are giving betting. Look at the person who's running the first leg. He doesn't hand the betting over to the second and then go and sit down. He's watching you all the way because he understands that the outcome of his performance is just based on the last leg. And so that's what culture is. So to summarize, get the values straight, get people to learn the values. So I stop somebody in my office, I stop them on the way and I say, tell me 2 of our values. And I'm checking whether they understand. And when they're understanding, I'm asking, so how have you expressed that in the last 1 month? And they're talking to me about that. It's going to take a long time, but you just keep at it. And one thing that's very important as well that I'll add to that is the tone at the top. Okay? Because as the leader, the camera is on you 24/7. The camera is on you. What you say, what you don't say, what you do, what you don't do, communicate something. So once you know that you are the first, driver of culture, will mean that you know the values, and in everything you do, you ensure that it's like a mirror in front of you. You are actually living the values. That way, I think that you can have a good chance of creating the culture that you want in the organization.
Wow. Again, you've dropped nuggets of gold for very. I've taken notes. My notepad is full. I will need to take time to digest. Well, I'd like us to just visit some of the questions. Is that okay, Aramide? Okay. So there's a question from.
In fact, I was going to say you can ask the last.
So I'm trying to let's take questions from. We have a few more questions. It can be a rapid fire one. How do you approach the idea of business transparency with employees at all levels? Expansion says further, particularly with financial transparency. Many business owners don't like employees seeing the money. They don't want their employees knowing that the company is doing well.
So I was saying, how do you do what? Say that again.
How do you approach the question of transparency? It's a situation where business owners don't want the employees to know that the company is doing well, maybe because they're afraid that they will ask for more pay.
I mean, yeah, that's great. And then, for me, when you talk about engaging the employee and making them be citizens of the company, you can't afford not to be transparent with them.
Wow.
One of the things that I do, and you can decide what you do. I learned that from one of my previous businesses, is that I've decided that every year, depending on the profit that the company makes, a certain percentage is shared with the employees. Okay. So is the reason that I must be very transparent with them. So every quarter religiously, we have what we call the town hall meeting. At the town hall meetings, we talk about performance, we look at the numbers, and we let them see what they stand to gain or lose if they don't, or if they do or don't put in more effort. So for me, I can't see why. Well, I mean, if you're not transparent with your employees, it's a choice you make, but then you can't be asking why they are leaving at the time they are leaving. But I choose to be transparent, and it's by, having constant town hall meetings. I do skip level meetings with them. I talked about that before. Skip level is I meet people, I grandfather them. So I meet my grandchildren. So I meet with the grandchildren in the absence of their father, in quote, just to make sure that they can be fully expressed and they leave nothing unsaid. That's the way I manage it.
Wow. I think it's a hard truth, but we agree, especially as entrepreneurs, startup founders, it's something to chew on, truly. A final question from Mr. Bolade Koka. I think he's one of the earliest people to join on this call.
Mrs.
I apologize deeply, Mrs. Bolade Koka. I apologize. When you're in Lagos, coffee. I think you're in London. Okay. So you said, based on your experience, what major challenge do you face working on the continent, interacting with the West? So you're managing you're managing a global brand in Africa. You have a dual consciousness. The West is looking at you, they are looking at global metrics, but you are in here. What has been your challenge there? And that will be my last question.
Wow, that's a very, very interesting question, to the extent that it's always assumed that as a CEO for especially a multinational company, that all of the issues you deal with are, should I say, congruent in a way that will satisfy all stakeholders. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, there are cases, or homogeneous, in fact, there are cases where you see a bit of conflict in the way that you have to deal with things, because when you sit on the as a CEO of a multinational company, you are dealing with both majority shareholders and minority shareholders, and as the CEO, as the manager of the business, and it doesn't matter even as an entrepreneur, okay, where you have shareholders and investors, okay, ultimately as the manager of that business, your responsibility is to ensure that you are your first point of loyalty is to the company and not to a majority shareholder. Now, what I've done that's worked for me is that I make the international partners or owners to create clarity around do's and don'ts, what you can do, what you can't do. And I did that well, for instance, when I was assuming the office of MD of Guinness Nigeria. I started with this global CEO, and it was all around, Seni, you can't change the name of Johnny Walker. Yes, sir. You can't change the name of Guinness. Yes, sir. You can't. So there'll be clarity around what you cannot do. Once that is passed, then you are given, you sign off a business plan, and then you go around with it, and the rest is that you deliver numbers. So I think it's being clear about what you can do and what you can't do, and then knowing that at the end of the day, if things go wrong, especially from a governance standpoint, you're the first to be called to order. So I think it's difficult, it's not easy, but if you know that your loyalty is to the company and by extension all shareholders equally, I think you should be on the right path.
Thank you very much, sir. I've enjoyed this immensely. I hope you have also.
Thank you. I think maybe we might want to get one or two questions live. Let's say one in the interest of time, because we want to also respect Mr. Adetu's time. So I wonder if anybody had questions, you could raise your hands and we'll pick somebody from the audience. I don't know why I feel like I know who's going to ask the question, but let's see. So if you can raise your hand on the Zoom, and then we can then get you to unmute. Nobody? Yes. We have one question. Okay, I thought it might have been Amina, but it's Dokum. Okay, Dokum, please go ahead.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And once again, thank you, Mr. Seni Adetu, for your time. I've had the privilege of listening to you a couple of times, and I must say, you're one of my favorites. One of my favorites. I'll just leave it at that. So to my question, I'm not a marketer, right? But as a business person, I've come to realize that everything comes down to marketing. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that, because at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, you are selling something, and how you sell is always very often tied to how people feel about what you're selling. So I'd like you to just touch about a little bit about the importance of marketing in business, on a general level.
No, I think you've said it all. From my perspective, so marketing is the reason you set up the business in the first place. And with all due respect to other functions, all due respect, and not to suggest that they're not important, but all those other functions are set up to service the role of marketing. Because at the end of the day, it's all about growing shareholder value. And the way you're going to grow shareholder value is to actually take your product, your service to the market. And that's what you call marketing. Okay. So, and doesn't matter whether it's a consumer product you're selling or whether it's a service, it's the same thing. So the only thing I would say is that you don't need to be a marketer to be a successful marketer. Somebody has said it. I didn't study marketing in school. I mean, obviously, after I got my MBA in marketing and so on and so forth. But the point is that marketing, what's marketing at the end of the day, is really about just having a business mentality about I've got to make money from what I do, and ensure that in doing that, or well, I reverse that, I've got to satisfy a particular need, but in doing that, I've got to make money. I'm not a charity. So once you know that that's what it is, I think a bit of common sense will push you on the journey. And then also, obviously, you can hire good marketers to support you. Like I said, you don't need to be a Philip Kotler or Michael Porter. You need to just get people to support you. But yeah, I can't emphasize enough the importance of marketing in business management.
Thank you, sir. And thanks so much, Jokun, for the question. We're going to move on to the final question from Kemi Adetu. If you can just unmute yourself. Or can we unmute her? Admin?
Hello, good evening. So good hearing from you, Daddy. So good to hear from you. So my question is, it sounds like a lot of your experience was in the corporate world before branching into entrepreneurship, and you spent a lot of time in the corporate world. A lot of young people today, when we're starting businesses, we just kind of jump head in, right? Would you say, or would you recommend that we spend, even if it's a couple of years or so, gaining specific skills, or would you say that these are skills that you can gain outside of the corporate world? That's my first question. My second question is, what are the nuances in working in Western Africa versus East Africa? What did you learn with that Pan-African experience?
Great questions. So the first about should we have some corporate experience before you go into entrepreneurship? Honestly, if you had the opportunity, that is a big yes, not just an ordinary yes. You talk about the fact that you would learn some skills and all that. For me, it's actually beyond that. It's the relationships that you build, it's the network you build, it's the understanding of governance in a way that it doesn't matter how smart you are or what degree you got out of school, you will not have known. I should never position myself like a genius, but I mean, if you spend 30 years with multinational companies, even if you are the dullest of people, the system will whip you to knowledge. So if you had the opportunity to do that, I solidly recommend it. Can I say that even the business that I started now is a function of the relationships that I built, while I was within those corporate world. I mean, my partners today are WPP. They're the biggest in terms of marketing communications agencies and all of that. And the reason that they could partner with me was that they were my client and they got to know about me at the time I was finishing at Guinness, and they thought, look, before you even think about anything, why don't we partner? So I had built that relationship. When I finished from Guinness, I got board appointments. I got chairmen and CEOs of banks calling me, please, can you come and serve on our board? Relationships built during the corporate thing. So it's beyond the skill set. It's beyond the skills. You can't even do entrepreneurship successfully if you don't have a mass of network, depending, of course, on what you are doing to support that. So I can't say that enough. You need it for many reasons, not just the skills that you get, like you said. West Africa versus East Africa, so many differences. I think I was talking about some of that in terms of, whether, and without mentioning the companies, in terms of some insights, behavior, the culture of some of those markets. I gave the example of some parts of that Africa where, sharing is accepted, and then you go to another part where, sharing is just not accepted. The other thing is that, we, especially some of us in West Africa here, we are so aspirational. I've never seen a more aspirational community than in West Africa, especially in Nigeria. There's this joke between the Nigerians and the Ghanaians. Some of you have heard me say it before, where they say that if you ask a Ghanaian, if you tell a Ghanaian, I love your T-shirt, and the Ghanaian will say, oh, this one, my dad gave it to me. And then you tell a Nigerian, I love your T-shirt, and the Nigerian says, oh, this one, I have 10 more like that. That's the mentality of the Nigerian. Or I bought it from Selfridges or wherever. That's the mentality. So those nuances that are very different. And what does that do? That should shape the way you go to market, your route to market, okay, in the way you look at them. Between the West and the East Africa, there's also, I don't want to mention which is which, but I want to say to you that there's some people that when it comes to credit from distributors, they do well more than some other parts. I'm not going to mention which. So the bottom line is that, and I said that earlier on in the course of this discussion, understand those local nuances, understand the culture before you say you want to set up business. If you go in, for instance, from a place where you're used to giving credit and getting the money back, and you take that approach to another market, guess what happens? You lose all of your investments. So I don't want to be specific about which is which, but I've just defined some of the differences between the West and the East. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Adetu. In fact, there's something you mentioned about the fact that I never saw it this way, where working in a corporate environment helps you build a network for entrepreneurship. This is the first time I'm ever hearing it, and it makes absolute sense. I remember this is even for my full-time job. We were interviewing somebody for a senior role, and after we finished, my co-panelist said, we cannot have him for this role because even though he knows the technical network needed to be done. So now I'm even understanding the value of network the more, whether it's from the corporate environment, from entrepreneurship, like what you've said. So thank you for that. And of course, thank you for these valuable insights. Shola has scribbled like 3 books, 3 books worth of notes.
You don't know what you've given me, sir. This is so much. If I publish it, your book.
We're so grateful. It will be such
My pleasure.
It will be a real pleasure to have you on again somehow, maybe in a different format with a larger pool. I don't know, but we'll definitely be following up. We just want to say a big thank you. This has been so amazing. Such great practical insight. Nothing, just all your experience. And that's really what we need to help us. It really resonates more. So we just want to say thank you. It's so appreciative on behalf of the Niger Startups community. And we look forward to meeting you perhaps next time in person. But thank you again. And everyone else, thank you, sir. Thank you, Shola. Thank you, co-panelists, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, bye. See you next time.